Hi everyone. Thank you very much to Steve for the opportunity of sharing with you briefly this morning about some of the things that I've been involved in over the last few weeks with the Salvation Army. As you probably are aware, the Salvation Army is involved in many aspects of social care globally as well as in this country. And the vision of the Salvation Army is threefold: to save souls, to grow saints, and to serve suffering humanity. During the time of this pandemic, the Salvation Army has been involved in many aspects of care in the community, but the area that I've been particularly involved in is food banks and keeping food bank operations running. So that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this morning and share some of our experiences. As the supermarket shelves have emptied, it's become increasingly hard to keep food bank supplies going. And that's been a cause of concern. And I think it's important to say that this is not necessarily because everybody's stockpiling. There aren't huge mountains of pasta and canned soup and baked beans created around the country. But our supermarkets and our retail food chains are super efficient, and that's how we enjoy such competitive pricing. But it only takes everybody to buy one extra can of beans or one extra bag of pasta for suddenly the shelves to become very depleted and for manufacturers to really struggle to keep supplies up, and that effectively is what has happened. Also, a number of food banks have had to close down. They're often run by volunteers who may be people that are retired, that have perhaps underlying health conditions and have had to self-isolate. So as the shelves have become emptier, people have not been able to drop off donations of food to the usual food bank collection points, and many of those food banks, as I say, have had to close down, unfortunately. So the response of the Salvation Army to this has been to create 22 regional food hubs around the country, and we've been stocking those regional food hubs with a range of soups and tea and coffee and tinned vegetables and tinned meat. And from these regional food hubs, we've then supported local food banks. So this has enabled the secure supply of food to local food banks. It's also avoided the need for volunteers to go into supermarkets to collect food and run obviously the potential risk of infection every time you go into a supermarket. Also, there have been restrictions on numbers of items that can be sold. So this has been quite an effective way of keeping food banks going. We've also been able to tap into a number of the commercial food supply chain operators whose traditional markets have dried up as restaurants and hotels and leisure centres have closed. So we've been able to point food out of those commercial supply chains into the domestic supply chain network. And that, again, has been quite an effective solution, although many of the commercial supply chains are struggling to get supplies in some commodities because there's the same factories that produce food for restaurant chains that often produce it for the retail market. We've also had a number of really generous donations from restaurants that aren't able to use their food. So Whitbread restaurants that own Beefeater and Brewers Fayre, Pret a Manger, which is a large chain of sandwich outlets that you're probably familiar with, McDonald's, and one of the large soft drinks manufacturers have all approached us and given us donated food, which we've been very grateful for. And often we've been able to take those straight from the restaurants and send them straight into people's homes. Often we've been offered chilled and frozen food, which we haven't got the storage capacity for. So we've literally picked them up from the restaurants. Salvation Army personnel have picked them up from the restaurants and in some cases from the warehouses that supply the restaurants and taken them straight to the users. I'd also like to thank very much those in St Mary's that have provided me with cash donations in order to support local food banks and for the very generous donations of food. And I've been able to make sure that the Need Project, which operates food banks in Bedfordshire, has been the recipient of those, and they've been very grateful. So thank you to all of those who have supported that. And lastly, just in closing, I'd like to ask you to remember in your thoughts and prayers and to give thanks for many of the people working behind the scenes in our food supply chain operations, the warehouse operatives, the truckers, the retail staff supporting the supermarkets, stocking shelves. All of these people are continuing to work, in some cases at quite significant risk to their own health, to keep us fed. And these people are not always given the recognition that they deserve. Many of them are not on big salaries, but they're continuing to go so that we can all be fed. So do please remember those and give thanks for them in your prayers. Thank you very much for this time of sharing with you this morning. God bless you all.